Okay, in this video, I am going to show you a way to export your displacement maps so that they have only displacement information and not your height, all of your height information. So just to show you some comparison, here is, I have essentially this set up inside of Substance Painter, and I have this diamond pattern with this kind of like speckly porous material. And I'll show you this in a second. I'll come back to this, but I wanted to kind of show you the results inside of RenderMan. So here I have, this is the material right here with Substance Painter normals. So this is the material. Here's a normal map. Here's a displacement map attached to this material. So this right here is just with my normal map turned on. So I saved a render where I just had the normal map turned on. And as you're probably aware, it looks a little fake, especially as the surface turns away from us. When viewed head on, it's not as noticeable, but towards the edges, and especially when it gets to a silhouette, you can't notice. And then this is with displacement. So you'll notice that the surface actually does move, and we still have all our porous information on it too. Sometimes, depending on how you've set up your file, sometimes you'll get a lot of like artifacting and weird shading. But we can come back to this in a second. And then I have the method down here, same exact material, but just have different displacement map and normal maps that I had set up inside Substance Painter. So this is the one where I separated my displacement map separately. So in it, you can see its normal map does not have the diamond pattern in it. So you can see in this one, this has both the pebbly surface pattern and the diamond pattern. And this other one, the normal map only has the pebble pattern, and the displacement has the diamond pattern, not the pebble pattern. And so the nice thing about that is if you compare them to each other, so here is standard displacement and my other method, you usually get finer control of your normal maps, so you can have like crisper normal maps. So the nice thing about normal maps is you can represent really small details, right? Displacement's not as good at that because it needs to subdivide your model a lot in order to get those really small details. And then I can, the other nice thing about this is that I can also tweak the displacement and the normal map separately. So I can't always control what it's going to look like inside of my rendering engine. I don't know what it's going to exactly look like when I'm working in Substance Painter and if it's going to translate over into RenderMan or Unreal or Arnold. So this gives me the ability to tweak it, right? So here I kept my normal map the same, and I just kind of dialed down the height of my displacement. So I just like cut it in half if I needed to, or I could push it further and pump it higher. And you can see I also dialed down the normal map, right? So you can see right around here, the normal map information changes. So the nice thing is I have this really big form information stored for pushing those diamond patterns out, right? Because those are really big foreign changes. And then all the smaller details I put into the normal map. And if this is too complex for your setup, don't worry, it's not a big deal. But if you are interested in being able to do this, I'm going to go ahead and cover how to address this. Okay, here I am in Substance Painter. This is my Substance Painter Viewport setup. I've just kind of made this really quick diamond pattern. And what I have here is, I'll go ahead and get rid of this one and go back to the height one. And we're just going to make one change here. All right, so normally when you're viewing displacement inside of Substance Painter, in order to activate it, so you can see the form is actually changing, you need to go over to the shader settings and push the displacement scale a little bit higher than 0. If it's just set to 0, your normal map might look really interesting and accurate, but then obviously it's not actually moving the surface. So if we want to actually use displacement in our other program, it's helpful to sometimes view our displacement inside here. So usually you'll do something like 0.3 or 0.03. And I have shadows, so it has like a weird calculation thing going on. And then of course you have to also increase your subdivision count just till it looks good. And this is just going to be how many times it subdivides it. So probably don't need to subdivide that much. Okay. So I have that, but the problem with that is if I come into my texture maps, if you'll look inside my normal map, you'll notice that the diamond pattern and all my surface detail is being stored in the normal map, right? So that's kind of a problem because that means that this information right here, these big diamonds, are going to be baked into the normal map with all this small detail. So that can be a little frustrating to separate the information. And if I wanted to use the displacement map from this, by default, RenderMan is, or Substance Painter is going to export for RenderMan the displacement. So here we can go here. That is taking your height channel, right? So it's essentially taking everything in your height channel and packing it down into your displacement map. So my normal map and my displacement map are both carrying a lot of the same information, because so you can see both of them have that diamond pattern, right? So that means my diamond pattern information is being represented twice, right? It's being represented by my normal map and my displacement map. Now, the reason why Substance Painter does this is, well, first of all, we're not separating or distinguishing anything against displacement and normal map, right? So you can see it's grabbing our displacement inside of Substance Painter as from the height channel. And that's where, if I'd looked over at my height channel, let's go to height, we can see that's where my information is. That's how I'm pushing all that information up. That's where we do a lot of our, surface detail information. And a lot of times you'll look at the normal plus height plus mesh, which is just your normal map plus your height map. And it shows it as a normal map for you, which is very cool. And then whenever I go to File, Export Textures, if I look at the output template for Pixar Surface, so RenderMan Pixar Surface, you'll see that for the displacement right here, what it's exporting is the height. So if I hover over this, you see that purple, it's grabbing all my height channel and throwing it into displacement. And then for my normals, so we'll go over to my normal map, it's taking my normals from my scene, which is essentially going to be that converted image right here, this normals plus height plus mesh. It's not going to be our normal map. It's going to be this. So it's going to convert that. What we can do if we want to go ahead and separate those out is we can go to our material, and I've already added it, but you can come in here and you can add a displacement channel. So you just click on this and go to displacement. I added that in. And all that does is it creates for now a separate material channel. So you can see now I have a displacement channel, just like my height channel. And it's going to do very much the same thing. But now, because I have displacement activated in the scene, I'll be able to see the detail. And then anything I put in here is going to be exported out can be exported out as a different map, but we'll have to take another step. So first, I'm going to go ahead and show you what this looks like over here. So this one right here is also doing the heights, but also, if I turn that off, you can't see it. So in this case, I'm going to go ahead and switch my displacement mode to displacement. You can see the surface moves, but it looks a little funny. And then I did a little bit of like a view adjustment effect just so I can see this in Substance Painter. So this is just like kind of like looking at it in Substance Painter so I can see it, but eventually I'm going to export it out without that. And the reason why the displacement looks so weird when you just put information only in displacement is because the viewport is rendering essentially not with ray tracing, right? So these shadows are ray traced, but for the most part, a lot of the information is not, the lighting information is not ray traced. If I went ahead and did iRay, then it should show me the information, right? Because it's actually like doing ray tracing, but it's not doing that inside of Substance Painter if I'm using just displacement. Now, if you did height and you're feeding height into displacement, you're moving it and you're seeing that shading because that shading is actually the fake from the normal map. So I did this little trick here, which I can talk about later, on how to just make it so I can see this while using the displacement channel. Okay, but the main difference I did was, here's my diamond pattern right here. And you can see I used to have everything in height, right? So I had everything in height by default. And then I just went ahead and just came to this channel and I turned on displacement and set it to the same value as my height channel. So you could do this at like export time if you want to, if you just want to work with height for the entire time. So that's how I set that up, and I got that to be working with displacement just for that information. But all my other information you'll see if I look at my displacement channel, and let's make sure this layer is turned on. So you see my displacement channel is a lot like my height channel was on this other one. So if we come over to this one and we look at our height channel, right, they look very much the same. But you'll see in this one I have a lot of that small detail also in here, because I'm adding in lots of little tiny forms and stuff like that. And then if I turn on this other image, if I go over to displacement, you'll notice all that small information is not in here, all those little tiny dots. I have this like kind of mask that I did put on here, but that's just part of that displacement channel, the diamonds. So that's just the diamonds channel. So that's all you really need to do to actually throw something into displacement inside of the Substance Painter viewport in a layer stack is you just need to find the layer that you want to be in a displacement map instead and turn off height and turn on displacement. And you just need to add that displacement channel to your texture set settings for that texture set. So I'm on the head right now. Okay, and then the next step in order to export it is you have to do File, Export Textures. And now you need an output that is going to be taking to that displacement channel. Because right now, Pixar Surface isn't using our displacement channel. If I come over here and look at displacement, you see there's no color. That means none of these maps are grabbing anything from the displacement channel. So you'll see on this one right here, I made one that does. So all I did was I took this RenderMan Pixar Surface, I right-clicked it, said duplicate, and then I renamed it. And I'm just going to call it disp export. You can see I already have one, 2. We'll just call it 2. And then what we're going to do is for this, normally for our displacement map, when RenderMan makes this displacement map, is it's grabbing it from the height channel, right? But our height channel has all of our normal map information as well. That's what's being converted down in that height normal mesh channel that you can see in here. So, and to grab the displacement information that I dumped into the displacement channel and put it into the displacement map, all I have to do is drag this displacement channel and replace this. And I'll just say gray channel. And now you'll see with that color right there, it is now grabbing the grayscale value from my displacement channel. And now when I export using this template, it's going to change that for me. So when you go to export, you just need to change it from your Pixar Surface to your displacement export template. And then you just export it like normal. And when you do that, what you will get is, so here I have, here's my normals one, right? So if we look at this one, we can see all that small scale detail, all those little dots and holes and stuff like that. So that was when I exported the normal way. And then here's the one where I exported the displacement way with the displacement channel. And you'll see there's that information's not in there, right? So you can see that little dotty spotty information. I probably should have made something a little bit more clear, right? But I got rid of that information there and put it into my normal map. So if I looked at my normal map, so let's see here, normal map, and then we'll go over to the other one, right? So here in this normal map, this is the default method. One of the problems, of course, is that you know, the diamond pattern is in my height and my normals, as well as everything else. Whereas with the new method, I can separate some of my information and just put it only in normals and not put it in my height or displacement, whatever. So hopefully that makes sense. That is pretty much the basics of it. Last thing I'm going to show is I'm going to show how to visualize this effect inside of the viewport if this is something you wanted to do. So now let's go ahead and take a look at how we can visualize this. Okay, here I am inside of Substance Painter. I'm going to go ahead and show my view displacement folder that I created. So normally if I went ahead and took my diamond pattern and set it to displacement channel instead of height, right? Because if I did height, it looks like that. And then inside here, I changed my displacement method to grab from the displacement channel. And so I created this view display layer just so I can put stuff in displacement in all my channels and not have to think about turning them off later, turning off the height channel, right? So I could just come in here, you saw right here, I have height and displacement. They're both on in the same channel. And the moving the mesh is coming from displacement, but the shading of this is coming from the height, right? So I'm going to go ahead and turn off that height. You could always do that if you just had it in one layer and you remember to turn it off. But if I wanted to have like a bunch of layers that had displacement and I didn't want to have to, you know, that sounds like really tedious, then what I would do is this method up here. And so I'm going to show it's a little complicated or confusing, but hopefully it'll help some people who want to do this. So I'm going to turn off my height on that channel. I'm going to come up here to this folder. I'm going to open it up, and this is what I have here. So what it's doing is it's kind of like turning on my height channel for all my displacement information, just so, you know, I can get that shading interaction from the normal map, right? From right there. Because if I didn't have that, then I wouldn't have that shading effect. So we'll go back to material. And so the way I do that is I created a paint layer. So I just added a paint layer or a normal layer. I right-clicked it. I added a anchor point. And then what I did is I went to my channel that had the displacement information, which is obviously called displacement. I changed it to pass-through. So pass through, what that does is it grabs all the information from all the layers below in that channel, and then it essentially has it ready inside this layer. And so normally you do that so you could apply a filter or desaturate or adjust with the levels all of the displacement in all those layers or whatever channel you're doing the pass through on. But in this case, I'm just doing this just so I can grab all of my displacement information and I can have it reference, essentially a reference point, because I created anchor point, which is used for referencing. So I can reference information, and I'm using pass through to grab all the information. So I usually, whenever I do this, I call this like grab displacement or grab height or grab roughness. It's all the same thing. I'm essentially trying to grab all the information I have in my layers in that particular channel so I could use them as an image or use them as a texture. So then what I do is I come up to this layer and I created a new added a new layer, or I could probably added a new just added a fill instead. Yeah, let's go ahead and do that. Let's just add a fill, and I'm just going to go ahead and set it to height, and we're going to go ahead and grab that anchor point, displacement anchor, and here we're going to make sure that displacement anchor is referencing, or it's grabbing it from the displacement channel. Let's do that. That's probably easier. So I'll go ahead and delete that. There we go. Okay, so it's essentially the same thing as if I came down here and turned on the heights on this channel, but this has the added benefit of me not having to do that for a bunch of layers that might have displacement. So essentially I'm just grabbing all my displacement information and then I'm plugging it into the height channel of this fill layer just so I can temporarily turn on height. One thing, if you put things inside of folders, you're going to have to, let's go to the height channel. Actually, oh, I guess it was in the displacement channel. No, that's not normal. There we go. Okay, yeah, there it is. So whenever you put things in folders, they might work outside of folders, but then as soon as you put things in folders for organization's sake, you lose certain shading interactions, and that's because the blend modes like this right here, pass through, is not actually working, right? Because if it's inside this layer, it's trying to do pass through on layers that aren't inside this folder because it can't reference these ones. So I can go ahead and select this and set this to pass through. So anytime you put like anything that has blending modes into a folder that's interacting with things outside that folder and your shading interrupts or your work changes, just go ahead and set the folder in that channel to pass through, and that usually fixes it. So when I go to export, this is where I could, start doing all my work. I can make all the changes I want in Paint and keep working inside of Substance Painter and keep displacement, right? So if I wanted to go ahead and let's say go over here and I'm going to go ahead and add a new fill layer, I'm going to go ahead and have it just affect the displacement. We'll push the displacement up, and let's go ahead and add an alpha. It doesn't really matter. So let's go ahead and add it here. And I'm going to set this to warp projection. And then I'm going to grab this and I'm going to do warp projection here. Okay. All right, so I have the pattern right here. And I just set this so that it's, and we'll call it a logo. You can see I just set it to displacement, right? So I can change that displacement and affect it however I want to. And I don't have to worry about, swapping this out into my normal map information or excluding it from my normal map information. And then I could have, again, like another layer. And so, oops, let's add another fill layer. And so in this one, I'm going to go ahead and add some, let's go ahead and I'm going to do dirt. I'm going to do dirt 2. So let's go ahead, and on this one, I'm going to do just height. And so this is going to be really small information, so I'm going to go ahead and put it into the height channel, which is going to end up in my normal map. So you can see here now I have this in my normal map. And then whenever I turn off this, my view displacement, you see all of the displacement information hides, except for, if it pushes the surface a lot, and the normal map information changes. So when I go to export it, that this view layer is just there so I can see this and look at it inside of the viewport with displacement on. And then I'm just going to turn that off when I'm ready to export. And then I can go to File, Export Textures. And then I'm going to go ahead and do RenderMan Pixar Surface Displacement Export. and then export on textures. And that's all you really need to do. So hopefully this video was helpful for anybody who is interested in exporting separate displacement maps.